This podcast started a little bit out the gate. Daniel Watson, he's a cybersecurity expert, and what his backstory, working in territorial forces, diffusing bombs. It's a simplistic way of describing it. And then also he talked about, at the very start of this podcast, he talked about a person that was on their fishing boat and they had their account hacked, and it said, we're going to share all the nasty things that you've been looking at online, as well as what you're doing, because we were recording the screen, and that's just such a daunting experience. I don't know about you, but I think any business owner that isn't thinking about cybersecurity during these times, it feels like a little bit of a compliance tick that you need to get involved with. But in reality, it's going to help make your business better. And even our business, we're having clients asking us, like, what are your practices? How are you protecting my information? And it's going to become something that's very, very important, and you don't want to be the person that's leaking information, and you lose your brand reputation as a result of it. So, with that in mind, let's kick into it. And also, if you want a book or some free stuff, I'm going to start putting all my guides and courses that I'm creating for free in the link below. So you just click that, subscribe, join the newsletter. What are you doing? You listen, might as well. Cool. Thank you. It's off. So, we've got Daniel Watson. Is that right?
That's right.
I say it?
Yep.
The cyber guru, and it's about to petrify every business owner that hasn't thought about it. No. Well, I'll be interested though. We usually talk about your backstory, but we'll get into that.
Okay.
But what are some horror stories in the cyberspace? People that just click the wrong email link, and then suddenly there's someone that's hacked their home, and they're just like out the gate stuff.
Oh, okay. Like a relatively minor one that was horrible for the person at the time was a few years back. There was a bit of a new thing which came out, which was sextortion emails.
Sextortion emails.
Yeah, so it's the email. The general format is,
all right.
You get an email and it says, disgusting. You're a very naughty boy. I can't believe the kind of things that you get up to in front of your laptop. I hacked your computer and I've been taking recordings using your web camera. If you would not like this disgusting material to be released to your entire contact list, send me X number of Bitcoin to this Bitcoin wallet.
Wow.
And to further prove it, your password is... Yeah. So I had a director who got that email while he was out in the Hauraki Gulf on a boating fishing trip. And he freaked out because that was his password. It was a password, and this is getting into, here's a hint, don't use the same password for 14 years across every single device and application you've ever had. I know it's terribly convenient, but it's horrifically easy to have exposures in one location mean that you're now got a potential breach everywhere. So we had to reassure him that, one, it wasn't likely that he had actually been hacked. These just are spam emails, and they're seeing who they can scare. Now, the addition of his password, that was a bit interesting because I'd seen it without that extra layer. Because, especially if anybody's been in business for any length of time, you're going to have signed up to other websites and put your information in there, created a password, gone on with your day. Now, there are dozens of these all over the internet, and these sites can get breached. Their password databases get cracked open and get added to big combo lists, which are sold on the dark web to others between scammers, right? So there's a whole black market economy. Some people collect this stuff and then they on-sell it, right? The people who are buying it are going to be using it in their scam. So they can take a list of email addresses and they can take a list of passwords and they can write a script that just goes, fires it all out there, and they see what comes rolling into their Bitcoin wallet. That Bitcoin wallet, I looked in it and it had about 11 grand's worth of transactions in it. So it was working for these people, that script. So once I made sure that he was clear that his machine wasn't hacked, it was like, okay, we need to now go through a process of changing your password everywhere you've been using it, right? And no, don't just change it to bear 14 exclamation mark, right?
Yeah.
That's not going to do it. It has to be completely different. So we did that, and so the end result was he was more secure than what he was at the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
But it did freak him out when he was out on a fishing trip when he should have been just enjoying time with his mates.
So I can't imagine. Even just internet history is rough enough. Like,
let
alone a webcam while scrolling.
That's
tough.
that whole thing of if you know a good mate, because when he hears that you're dead, he rushes around to your place and deletes your internet history.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I was thinking the exact story.
Yeah. I thought about creating a service based on that, but I thought, no, I should just focus on what my primary job is. Grow my business.
Good man. Well, I mean, that's the reality. Is as you say, a lot of people do use the same password over and over, and there's a lot of entry points. But I think we'll scale it back because that's a great story out the gate. But like, how does one suddenly discover that they want to do that for a living? You know, you're playing around on a computer, someone hacked you when you're 5 years old, and you're like, never again.
Oh, no, there's no Batman type, origin story that's going to freak people out. I essentially failed out of university. I'd like to joke that between me and my wife, we've got an average of 1.5 university degrees each.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
Round
she's
it up.
got 3. At the time in the mid-90s, I had been doing electronic engineering and trying to live away from home, and I was working part-time, and I was trying to so it really wasn't a good space to be studying and working, and it didn't work. And I think the killer thing was like missing one lecture of engineering mathematics. And when I turned up the next time, because I had a grip on it, then the next time I turned up, I was like, I have no idea what's going on in front of me. I was like dropped off the face of the earth, and I had a terrible year. I ended up joining the Army Reserve, or the Territorials as it was known then, so I could feel like I'd actually achieved something that year. Went through basic training. And I stayed in the Army Reserve for a long time after that. So some parts about what informs me regarding security comes from essentially 19 years in the Army Reserve. There's nothing to do with electronics then. I was a combat engineer, so dealing with mine warfare and bombs, boats and bridges. Great fun. Fun. But it does teach you about situational awareness and looking at tactics and techniques of security, right? Booby trapping was very fun. We didn't train to booby trap in the New Zealand Army. We trained to demine and remove booby traps.
Yeah.
Thing is, you need to know one to know the other. So
yeah.
But I did enjoy electronics. I did enjoy IT, and I used a connection to get into the business through my brother. Now, at the time, in the mid-90s, there weren't really any university degrees that was focused on doing IT stuff. So my brother was involved in bringing X25 packet networking into New Zealand because I think it was Mainfreight wanted to input a distributed terminal system throughout the country so they could manage logistics but you couldn't do that independent of telecom because it wasn't deregulated. So they spun off a subsidiary company, and we went off to the States, and they came back and they brought this technology back to New Zealand. Amazing, right? Because I won't get into the technology of that. That's geeking out too much.
I was going to ask you about the bombs.
But the people that they were hiring was basically anybody with a heartbeat and an IQ greater than like 96.
Well done.
Yeah, right. So if you could think and you were in a complete divot, then you did well in IT because they would train you in everything right from scratch, which was fantastic because I prefer to learn by doing. That's kind of my thing. If I have to, then I'll watch a video or listen to it at a stretch. Reading is probably down the bottom of the pile of how I like to learn. Sitting in a lecture hall was horrible. So I just did well in IT. It is constantly changing. It's always novel, and you're generally dealing with like-minded individuals. It's changed a bit. Now you actually can get people trained up to do exactly the kind of job you need them. But as a result, I tend to value people that can demonstrate capability and can show experience and have really excellent communication skills to somebody who's got a huge list of qualifications, right? Because I've experienced people who've got qualifications and then you hire them and then you spend the next 3 months going around apologizing and cleaning up. right? Which is not fun.
No,
right?
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the key things when hiring anyone is values, vision, and interest in the actual role. Because I think that curiosity, I mean, it can be malleable. I think to be a good business owner, you've got to have some understanding of each component of the business, but then outsourcing it to the people that do it well.
Yeah, that's right. I like to try things on myself, realizing that, oh, this is a lot harder than I thought, and then pass it on to somebody else.
Dude, I don't want to be doing anything other than what I love and what I'm good at. And it's it's doing a disservice to the business, really.
Well, it informs you, because then you know what bad looks like. Because sometimes if you don't know at all, you don't even know that something, what the outcome might be is pretty shoddy. But at least if you know what shoddy is, because you've created it yourself, you can go to someone who goes, you're doing a really good job. I like your process with that. Wow, you make it look easy. And it will be easy for them, which is why they can make money out of it, right? Because if it was all just really, really hard for them, then
it would be ground
to dust.
Yeah, well, yeah, it would. I think, I mean, it's important, especially from a lot of business owners I've seen fail or be ripped off, is because they didn't have a basic overview of what's happening, so they completely delegated all the accounting to the accountant, and then suddenly he disappears off to the Bahamas. Yeah,
that's probably another feed into why I'm into security. I should have led with that. Okay, so a few years back, I did get ripped off by my office manager. She interviewed extremely well. Her references checked out. She was studying towards a master's in business studies. Sweet as pie, would make muffins. Seemed really, really efficient. Then some time passed and we were not doing very well. Even though I'd kind of got my handle on sales and marketing, was bringing in more business than ever before. We didn't seem to be making any headway. And then one day I got a call from the IRD saying, where's that $89,000 you asked? I'm like, what? Excuse me? She claimed it had all been paid. I'm like going, well, one of us is wrong here. And the IRD is not usually known for making cock-ups like that.
Yeah, no,
right?
Good.
So, which one is it? Anyway, the accountant couldn't find. I was like going, hey, I just want to check what's going on with our books. If we, I've not got any specific suspicions, but I'm not sure, right? And he came back and said, your expenses are a little high. I'm like, okay. And then I got a tip off from somebody who had worked with her in the past and tangentially not worked with her, but worked with somebody who worked with her. And he said, called me out one day and said, that woman's bad news. And I'm like, going, oh yeah, okay. He's a competitor of mine. I mean, and I've met him before, but I've been like, we're not mates. Okay, all right, fine. And I didn't think anything more of it, right? He kind of mentioned a couple of things, how she'd messed around with a mate of his company. Anyway, so I put it out of mind, but it wasn't until the issue with the tax thing came to a bit of a head, and I wanted to meet with her and the accountant to figure out what's going on. Why has this not been paid? Where is the money, kind of thing. And she kept on missing those meetings. And then threw in a, what do you call it? Harassment claim against me. Personal grievance, that's the word. And I'm like, what? I'm like going, hang on. What's this about? And then I thought, okay, now that makes me seem really suspicious. And like, what is going on? Because I know myself, and I actually did have a moment of pause, and I went and checked with my friends and my colleagues and went, am I a bully? Am I the kind of person that should get one of these? Or because sometimes you don't know, right?
You got to ask. I can be a bully sometimes, to be honest.
That's right. I think anybody can be any of those behaviors, but you just, you hope most of the time you have it in check, right? Or you learn to apologize early, and alter your behavior. So it turned out, no, okay, fine. So I went back to that dude who gave me the tip off. And then I spoke to the person he recommended I talk to, and turned out the company had changed hands, and the person that he put me in touch with was the new owner. The new owner was a chartered accountant. He'd come in and went through the books, and he just found all sorts of evidence, right? Because she got paid out on a settlement claim with a personal grievance from that company, as understood, and or something like that. And he'd taken up the new business and went through the books and found all these things where there'd been grifts going on. So he told me to look in my payroll, go to look in the company entries in the account system, look at the overtime, look at the expenses, everywhere he told me to look, I found something. So she just
replicated
it, right? And at that point, I went, right, I'm not going to let this kill me, right? Because it was the kind of thing that could have just, a lot of people told me, just fold it, walk away. It's, personal grievance claims, the business is always seen as the big baddie with lots of money, poor employee. Yeah, I'm like going, yeah, but this woman really did the dirty on me. She should be brought to justice. And I just thought, no, I'm gonna go for it, right? Because you see these news articles about people in small businesses, and they just get taken to the cleaner by these fraudsters, right? And internal fraudsters are just as dangerous as the external ones, right? So long story short, and about 3 years later, she ended up in prison. So took her down. It was great. Feeling.
What do you get sentenced for something like
that? She got 2 years, 9 months.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Decent. Hey.
Oh, yeah. I think
I was thinking 90
surprised.
days. I don't know why. But...
No, it was, she got a custodial sentence, but we were surprised she got that.
Oh.
Yeah, but I think just because, the defense was ridiculous and she hadn't shown any real remorse for it, right? All the way through. There'd been no explanation, no attempt to.
Well, I mean, that's the tricky thing. So, humans have a few components to them. There's the antisocial behavior. It's quite commonly talked about the domestic violence component, not to link that to that, but that's a serious thing that happens to people. The one that's not as openly discussed is the antisocial behavior, where they use character assassination as a means to be a non-violent way to cause harm. So what would be your lessons, either, it's hard not to be jaded after that, but what are the practical takeaways to stop business owners falling into that frame, whether it's a personal grievance or having fraudulent activity in the business or? Yeah.
Okay. So, I think there's the fraud triangle is, motive, opportunity, and justification. What you got to do is focus on the opportunity. That's the one that's in your control. Their motive and their justification, that's going to be in their head. So by closing off the opportunities, that's your best way to protect. Because, there's sometimes people do silly shit just because, it was sitting on the table and they could just swipe that $100, right?
Yeah.
And normally they'd never do that, but, they'd had a couple of drinks and they just decided the guard was down, did it, and they'll regret it horribly later, right? Or they won't. And then they'll go, oh, nobody saw me last time. I'll do it again. Nobody saw me do it again. Holy shit. Maybe I'll swipe 200 now. A lot of things happen like that. Things that you can do, obviously, are getting into very practical steps. And this was a great lesson from the person who replaced her eventually. She said, I told that entire story, and she said, I never want to be put in a situation where you could even accuse me of what she did. So what we're going to do is just put these separations in place. So I will not be able to authorize any payments. I will not be able to enter any bank accounts. That's your role. You will approve. I will always supply you with the invoice attached to every payment that goes out. And this is actually a lot of people are listening to this probably going, yeah, duh. But the thing is, when you start off in a small business and you go from 1 to people, right? Yeah. And then the first person that helps you in accounts is a family friend. And then at some point, you got 100% trust in that person, right? And they've got much more access than they need. And then you go hire somebody outside of that circle of trust. You actually got to show a lot of discipline to go, okay, all right, I didn't have any policies and procedures in place. Now I'm going to do it now, though. This is when I'm going to change it. All right. So, and that is not easy. So that's like the best I can suggest there is like, be aware of where your trust is being given and when it needs to be not rescinded, but reestablished or put boundaries in place. Another really big one that I see over and over and over and over and over and over again is shared credentials, right? So I would not have been able to secure a successful prosecution if the defense lawyer had been able to ask me the question, did anybody else have access to this account? Right? And if I had said yes, there's your reasonable doubt. So the other person, somebody else could have logged into this account and made that payment then, right? And most times I hear why people are not using like separate accounts is because they're saving $6 a month on a Office 365 license. I'm like, that's just insane. You know, would you pay $6 a month to make sure that, you know, nobody's ever going to be put in that situation? I mean, of course you would. It's like nothing. So yeah, those are the first couple of things that come to my head about protecting yourself. Having those separate accounts means that everybody's actions can be attributable, can be logged separately, and can be audited.
Makes sense. I mean, there's an old saying, you know, like it's better to build a fence at the top of the hill than clean the mess up at the bottom.
Yeah.
There was, funnily enough, my business associate, he started in 1987, but before that he was in the corporate fraud unit.
Oh yeah, cool.
And he came in, found this investment group, and he thought, oh, they're saying these returns, but is it sustainable? And he actually liked what they were doing. And he took the principles he learned from the corporate fraud unit to set up the structure the way it is. So early on, they set up a custodial trustee because what he saw is that when advised, and I'll explain what that is if you're not sure, what it does is it keeps the money separate from the advisor. So whether the advisor is doing financially well or bad, there's a structural component set up.
Gotcha.
And the same thing, KiwiSaver is structured the same way. So you've got a custodial trustee that acts as the supervisor for the actual provider in KiwiSaver. So if the provider goes under, the money just comes back through the supervisor and back to the client itself.
Oh, very good. Yep.
So it's an important component. What would you say from a business standpoint then, from cybersecurity sort of structures and mechanisms that they should be good practice, you know?
Okay, so probably in that aspect, it'd be the zero trust model.
Oh, yeah.
So
I'm good at that one.
Yeah, so what that looks like is that assume everybody is a threat, right? And then you allow them precisely what they need to do their job and nothing more. So for an example, a common thing I see when people have set up like Office 365 or they're a small business is that person, like maybe you yourself, are the global administrator for that domain, and you might have 5 staff or what have you. And that's very easy. It means that you can quickly add a new user account for them so they can get access to email, and you can do things very quick and snappy. Great. Because the most important thing when you're small is just being nimble and get things going fast, being able to be responsive and get back to your customers and onboard people quickly, and so they can start making you money. However, as the boss, you're probably the most easy person to scam within the organization because you think you're really, really smart. And you can't be tricked. Yeah. Okay, that's a real problem because if you've got that kind of mindset, you're so much easier to scam, right? Now, in terms of the problem that causes though, is that if your account is hacked, they now have access to everything, so they don't necessarily have to lock ransomware you right away. They can just set up a forwarder on your email account or on anybody's email account, to be fair, and then monitor the mail that's going back and forth between your account until they find like a really great opportunity to drop the hammer. That's where those business email compromises kind of come in. I don't know if that term's been floating around for a little bit, but essentially what it means is that they've got access to your email account. and they're waiting for an opportunity, such as like a conversation about accounts payable or a large supplier order. And then if they've got access to the whole email chain, right, they can insert themselves into that and say, reply as you, and say, oh no, change that bank account number to this, or change the delivery address to this, right? And whoever's receiving that is going to go, oh, okay. Now, unless you've got really good policies in place to say any situation like that where there's a change of bank account or specifically regarding the company and how your processes, it needs to be verbally or confirmed through a secondary method that's pre-agreed, right? Not a second email, right? Obviously. And that's the way you can protect it. And that's cyber risk policies. They either have an exclusion in there for a business email compromise because it's happening so often, or they state exactly what you need to have in place in terms of processes and protections in order to be covered should that happen anyway, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Just the camera runs out 30 minutes and I just keep it rolling. All right, there we go. We're off again.
Yeah.
So if there's a poor break in the middle, I've got it on here and here. I'll just look at my face for a period of time. So with the cyber security component, I like as well because, you've got quite a unique insight to different businesses. So it might be a little left field, but I'm curious, what are some like common technological stacks that you find are actually quite useful for a small to medium sized business that might either it's a certain type of CRM, whether it's an automation in terms of marketing, or maybe it's helps with account payable. Is there sort of either overarching principles that are useful or tools that are used quite commonly that you think? Sprung you with that. I didn't
Okay, so no, I was just thinking like an example that came to me this morning. So if you give a shit about your information security, like you care about your client's information, keeping it private, or you've got confidential information or intellectual property, which it's the crown jewels, needs to be kept secure, then you need to have some ways of making sure that actually is operationalized, right? You can write a policy that says you should never email this client database outside the organization. For most companies, that's kind of where it stops, and they just hope and trust that their staff don't do that. However, I have had to do data recovery on plenty of sales managers' mailboxes, right, for when they've left the company and they've realized that the guys purged out the mailbox, and they have noticed that a few of their clients have now wandered off to their competitor.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so this stuff does happen, right? So it's nice to trust people, but it's even better to make sure they can't do it in the first place.
Yeah.
So there's advantages to not having things scattered around, I guess is where I was going to go with this, is that if you're using a whole bunch of free tools to do various things, right? And I do see this in alarmingly large companies that certainly afford not to pay for the free version. And I just remind you that if it's free, you are the product, right? Because they're selling your information. That's just how it is in the modern world, right? So if you've got a Gmail address, which you're getting for free, then Google is mining your mailbox for information they can use to sell stuff to you.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So right.
There
China
is
just
the
does it through
exception.
TikTok.
Was that? Oh, TikTok in China. Yeah, they're going mad. Yeah.
Yeah. That information's going back to the military over there. Anyway, it's not paranoia. That's just the way it is. So, pay for the full stack. Like if it's a product that you like and you're using it, stop using the free version. Get the paid version of it, and you're going to get better support, and you're going to have better security features out of it, right? And in terms of having your data in lots of different places, the more you can consolidate it and simplify it, the easier it is to actually protect it, right? Because then you're not having to put security controls in place in multiple locations in different ways, and then having your people going through different hoops in order to achieve the eventual same outcome. It's kind of wasteful, and the harder it is to do, the less likely it will actually happen. That's just kind of the way it is, right? The simpler you can make things within your business to to slipstream the entire process from beginning to end, from customer inquiry through to successfully retained customer that gives you referrals, the better it is for everybody. Because if it's complex and hard to manage, there'll be more holes.
It's interesting that principally that probably has some transference from your experience in the territorial forces, I think is what you said.
Yeah. They
Like,
rebranded Army Reserve.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's the problem. If you're standing like in the middle of a field and you got no cover and you're trying to protect everywhere around you, as opposed to a certain area where there's certain variables and you have certain things within your control, I guess you can reinforce it more effectively.
Yeah,
that's my layman's perception.
Sure, I mean,
is it truth or
we might say stay in your lane. Soldiers just don't run all over the battlefield.
Yeah,
they get lined up, pointed in the direction, and that's their axis of advance. And as long as the people to the left and the right of them are doing what they've been trained to do, then they'll be able to advance together, and shouldn't be able to shoot each other. If you don't stay in your lane, you're in somebody else's lane, and you might be in front of them, right? Then you can advance towards the enemy and achieve your objective, right?
Is it transferable, from a leadership component, or is there aspects from your experiences there that you can bring into business and business owners should think about?
Okay, so
cover and move.
There are some, thoughts out there that the military is full of gung-ho meatheads. Not entirely wrong, but it is actually a really great training organisation, right? Sometimes I saw when newbies came in, they would chaff against the rules and regulations in the military. Okay, but generally, for every rule and regulation in the military, somebody has been maimed or become dead as a result of doing it a different way. So we don't do it that way. And it's simplified down and made as soldier-proof as possible, because the way the military want to train you is to the point where the correct reaction is instinctive. You don't actually have to think about what to do when you basic drill, react to effective enemy fire. What's effective enemy fire? When bullets are passing through the people around you. Because bullets can be flying overhead. Somebody can be shooting at you, but if they're not hitting anybody, it's not effective. All right, keep going. It's when the bullets start hitting people right next to you, then you go through that, drop down dash, peek, look, move, shoot, right? There is a process, and it goes on. And if everybody's following that, casualties be minimized and people can move forward to achieve their mission. There is great things with regards to communication in the military as well. The orders process, which they smash into you over and over and over again, especially as you get rank, is fantastic for planning, because you get to appreciate what your two up, the commander above yours, what their intention is, right? You understand the broad mission, you understand what your boss's mission is, and then he's handed you your mission. So, and that helps with people being able to use their initiative, because when the plan changes and whatever the way they had originally planned it was not going to go, they can go, well, I know what the desired outcome is and I can work around it. So in terms of translating that to business, making sure that, if you've got salespeople and they've found out that this client's, we do this for all of our clients, but this client's main concern is this. It's like, right, make sure that main concern is imprinted in the brains of the people who are actually going to go and do the work at the end, right? The engineers or the techs, right? Because if they know that is the primary thing the customer cares about, and they do that, then all the other stuff which you do in the background, which may not necessarily be seen with a great deal of value, it can come later, right? Or be snuck in. But, because sometimes you just run into roadblocks, and that's what it is, right? You've just got to deal with it. It enables people to be more flexible, but attain the results at the end of the day, which is what matters to the client. Yeah. Debriefing. Got to debrief.
What the thing is, I don't know if you know Jocko Willink. He's ex-Navy SEAL. I think that's a big mistake that I see managers or leadership or business owners, is that they they don't decentralize the chain of command in the sense that they micromanage the process and it bottlenecks to them.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of what you're talking about is, you've got an omission, you assign it to them, and you give them the freedom to make the call. Because very rarely is your perception of how the events are going to unfold are going to be correct. And then if the person's not a part of that mission and isn't actually emotionally invested and has the confidence to adapt with it, then, you've got a job, not a business.
Yes, because you're constantly going to have to direct them and redirect them, and then things are going to stop, and then you've got to jump back into the process.
Yeah.
No, I don't like blame games either. It's when you're briefing somebody on what the task is, you need to have also communicate, or at least have a plan for what's the worst case scenario. What in the military parlance, it's like, what's the most dangerous course of action the enemy could take? What's the most likely course as well, right? So what are they likely to do? But what's the most dangerous thing that they could do to your plan, right? And in IT, it's like, a system failing and you don't have a backup, right? Because you can get forgiven lots of things, turning up late, missing out a piece of item or something like that. But if you lose client data, that's it, you're poked, right? Because that's the one thing they care about is their data, their crown jewels. So, yeah, there is a lot of value in briefing your people properly and making sure they understand.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I've yet to have a conversation on this podcast. It wasn't interesting. Maybe I've got a problem, but like cybersecurity, you made it interesting. Okay, so what? Let's say someone reached out to you and they wanted to understand how this works. Like, is there a process or a format that you go through to either recognize issues or to deliver on certain outcomes, or?
Yeah, it's IT and cybersecurity, very broad topics. Okay. And then you've got all sorts of different types of businesses. So to make things simpler for us, we subscribe to an international open security framework, right? Which we use the CIS controls, which is a community created set of standards, and it's designed to help businesses of all sizes and even quite small size businesses get best bang for their buck in terms of protecting themselves, because it's not just antivirus and a firewall. In this set of controls, there's like 155 safeguards amongst 18 control sets that deal with how you manage assets, through to application security code reviews, right? So for a lot of the businesses, a lot of those controls don't apply, but we've got subsets. And what we do is we go through, and when we engage with a client, normally we start with like a baseline security risk assessment. So we're talking to them, we're interviewing them, we've got a bit of a questionnaire that we go through, we do some internal scans, some external scans, gather up all this information, using your Mark 1 eyeballs as well to see what they have, right? Like that's quite valuable, walking around a client site and just seeing how many sticky notes are on monitors and what's written on them. It's a trope, but it's so true. The other trope is walking over to your office manager's top desk, pulling out the top drawer and grabbing that little black book that has all the passwords in it. Yeah. All right. Use password managers, people. So going through that, and then we've got a baseline where we can go like, what are the quickest things that we can do to get you from being the lowest hanging fruit to lift it up the tree somewhat, right? Because the most common ones are those like the sleet of email spam that comes in that has got scams in it, right? That's the most common way you're going to get threatened. So if we can secure that environment, that's going to be a quick win. Can we train people up? Can we put in place some backups? Because some people don't even have proper backups. And I might want to make a quick point. Your OneDrive, your Google Drive, your Dropbox is not a backup. It's a synchronization of your files from one computer to another computer. And the cloud, you can substitute that with somebody else's computer. Well, all my files are in the cloud. All my files are on somebody else's computer. Oh, okay, they just synchronize back to your machine, right? pretty much all of those environments, they have a shared security model. So they've given you a computer to store your stuff in that's going to be really robust because it sits in a data center and it's well secured. The lights are never going to go off. The power's never going to stop. The internet connection has got multiple redundancies. All great, you know. But if you delete something from there and then you don't realize that you've deleted it or accidentally, and then you come back, 90 days later and try and find it, it's gone, right? It's past the point where you can recover it. That's not a backup. Remember the old backup when you had a server sat in the corner of your office space, right? The small business server. People had thousands of those around, right? You would have a backup, a tape that you'd take out, and you'd have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday tape. You'd have a Friday 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? And then you might have like a monthly one. And you'd retain these backups for an extended period of time, because occasionally there'd be times when you go, oh, I deleted that folder, but that was a year ago. Can I get that back? Yeah, you can. Go back to that old tape, that rotation, pull it out of rotation, stick it in, recover it. People don't realize that when they shift into the cloud, they lost that depth of retention. And that sometimes comes back to bite them outside of that 30-day window where you can undelete something from your Google Drive.
Makes sense. What is a good practice for storage of information? So you got the cloud, that's a computer with this redundancy, and then you got something else.
So, like I like to, there's the 3-2-1 rule: 3 copies of any critical data in 2 different formats and 1 offsite. So, so for cloud storage, yeah, great. You've actually got in 2 locations. One of it's on your computer, one of it's on the cloud, somebody else's computer, right? Having it in a 3rd location is great. So, commonly, there's a lot of software tools that do this now, so you can set up so your Google Drive and your email that sits in Office 365 or hosted Exchange can be sucked out into a 3rd-party cloud location or down onto a NAS storage device in your office. I tend not to like boxes sitting in people's offices because they have a bad habit of getting leaked on from, leaky taps, stuff like that. If it's up in the cloud, it's in another data center. There's no way to access that data center by the bad guys. Usually have like really, really long infinite retention and good search capabilities, so you can go finding that one email that was sent to David somebody, and I think it was in March 2019. It mentions something about like I get queries like that, and then if you've got a tool that can do that, it's great. Yep, found that email for you. Oh wow, where was it? You deleted it on the 19th of July that year. All right, okay, cool. There you go, sweet, right? And because that can be like the difference between, a client querying a bill and saying that, oh, so-and-so from sales said we were going to get a 40% discount. And you're like going, no, you wouldn't have.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, especially in our industry, we begrudgingly do compliance. But it's actually like when I had to do all the paperwork for it, and it's not a skill set, but I just looked through and looked at all the processes and the underlying reasoning for the compliance itself. And it is just good practice as a business. It's like even just the business continuation plan, if certain things happen or key people were to pass away or be sick or COVID hits. When COVID first came, I'm not really a stressor. So I was like, fuck, who cares? But then, Rosemary, she's more compliance orientated, more system orientated. So she was like, hey, we need to have a means of accessing all our information remotely that we can execute overnight. And if she didn't think that way, we'd be in a bad place. So, is there a way to, let's flip it, as opposed to like a fearful problem or like you have to do it for compliance? How does it make your business better having cyber principles within it?
Okay, so there's a few different ways. Like I'm looking for businesses that are they're having to work overseas and do compliance, or they like I said before, because they're usually got a higher level operational maturity. And if you're going through a process of like assessing properly what are the risks in your organization, it's not all cyber risks. There's all sorts of risks in your business. The IT stuff is a subset of that. right? And it's just part of like, talking to some insurance brokers. Some insurance brokers have got a really good head for having that whole risk conversation, because like they're already dealing with the fire in general, right? Then they can work through the client. Well, what are all the risks? Because the purpose of insurance is to transfer the risk from the business to the insurance company. You pay them a little bit of money, and if something goes wrong, they pay for it and help you remediate it, right? In IT, we try and be that, because they're the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, right? We're trying to be the people. We're trying to be the guardrail, right, on the mountain road as you're driving your company up the hill as a bus. You can get somebody who jumps on the bus and tries to grab hold of the wheel and throws it off the side of the mountain, and sometimes that will just go straight through the guardrails. But if you've taken a whole bunch of steps within the business to increase its resiliency, the likelihood of that actually happening becomes much, much less. So you're mitigating or minimizing the risk, right? Or you might simply remove some risks by just changing the way you do things. And like, when that was bad practice, we can do it this other way, and it'll either be more efficient or it'll be more secure, or both. Who knows? But by just avoiding certain risks entirely, or just minimizing by like going, practically speaking, we've got a budget of this, so we're going to do this much and reduce the risk profile from being, unlikely but catastrophic if it happens to very unlikely and somewhat of a median impact, right? So like, and to think, because you have to look at the whole business holistically. And in IT, we touch a lot of things, and a lot of the tools that we use on a day-to-day basis are IT related. But that's not the only thing, right? I mean, and I'm not the best person to speak to about non-IT related things, so I won't. Does that give you an idea of kind of where we try and help clients? Because if you're going through, say, and this is why, I want to talk about ISO, like ISO 27001, Information Security Management Systems. If you flow through this, then you're having a top-down discussion from the board on down as to what are the priorities in the organization, understanding what is the critical assets within the organization and how you can protect them, and what are the policies relating to them. At the board level, they just have to make statements about, this is critical, this is not, this is something we need to see action now. And then once you've got those policies and stating, no company information should ever be on a person or mobile. All right, cool. That's our policy with regards to mobile devices. We just make sure that's implemented in the real world through IT management, right? And if those policy things get operationalized, then that risk disappears, because you don't have to worry about what's on those phones, because you're never put in that position where that could happen. Absent the policy, somebody might come along and go, you know what, I can work a lot more efficiently if I just let's use this app, and I'll start using it. Because some people will just go, they're just so keen, their intentions are so good, they just want to be as efficient as possible. So they'll go out and find a tool or a widget, and they don't realize that they're going to be opening up a hole in their security, or creating a possible pitfall for the business later on, right? It's called shadow IT, where people just start putting in their own bits and bobs.
Yeah, I think that's also an art, is like, you got the systems and processes, but how do you communicate it to staff in a way like it's recurring, that it's still important, that we didn't just tick the box and put it in the bottom of the box?
Yeah. It's got to live it, right? So these things have to be reviewed. So if you're going for like a certification for a security framework, for an ISO standard, you have to show evidential proof, right? Like, and I'm seeing this come actually through cyber risk insurance policies, where they're saying, oh, okay, great. So you are doing cybersecurity awareness training. Okay, well, can you send us a report on the level of compliance within your staff members for completing this? Okay. Cool. Turn to the IT. Can you give us a report? What?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they actually need to like submit evidence in order to get the certification complete. And so it becomes a living document. So you actually have to live and breathe it, which is going to take work, because that's could be changing the culture of how you operate, which I think in any organization has to be very intentional. It doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah, well, especially in that side of things. I mean, we're going to face it in our industry, and you make a good point about the actual policy itself may be null and void because you didn't take that certain process. In our industry, we're transitioning to be an actual financial advice provider, and I can just see a whole lot of them just ticking a box as opposed to delivering on the expectation that they've set. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, I see it all the time, right? Because clients get that renewal time for a cyber risk, and we get like an email, and it's an excerpt. You see 16, 17, 18, lines and questions, right? Going, hey, why are you only asking me 3 questions? I want to see questions 1 through 14 on the cyber risk policy, because, I might happen to know that this client is only taking up a small fraction of our full security stack. And I know the kind of questions that come out on those things, right? So it is really common that people just do a quick tick and flick, and they go, oh yeah, my IT guys got that managed. But their IT people might actually be going, no, we talked to you about that, but you didn't take us up on it, right? So then they're opening up themselves to a risk, because they're not having a full and frank conversation about, are we actually compliant with that? I think it's better to actually let your IT people look at the whole thing and go, no, that's fine. We definitely do. Oh, no. We talked about that once, remember? And you said, not right now, I'm busy with this project. Fine, whatever it is. But generally,
Yes, they are. I think that's the whole challenge. You trying to sell the idea to, like, people. Like, I think deep down we understand that cybersecurity is a problem, but it's never going to happen to us. It's kind of like, death. Like we're going to die, but we're pretending like we're not. And trying to articulate and communicate that in such a way that people see value and see value in enough to not just see it as an overhead. Because, it's going to be a cost, and my expectation would be it might cost a lot. And I guess when we wrap that up, what would be your counter to people being like, oh, I don't want to pay this money. It's probably going to cost heaps, Daniel. You've got that nice shirt and that nice truck downstairs. You must be doing something right.
Okay, so what I'd say is that, I had a conversation this morning with an organisation, not for profit, and their concern was we don't have a lot of cash. I'm going, no problem. What we'll do is we'll just adjust the pace to your budget. So, there is they had a security risk assessment done a year ago. Now they're having a conversation because something did happen. Suddenly budget appears. That's kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
Unless they've got a very active board who recognises their responsibilities, and they're going, we're directly liable if we have a breach. So I don't want that to happen, right? So if they know their responsibilities, they'll be a bit more active on the board level. And they'll push it down and say, expectations set, come back and tell me what you've done. But we adjust the pace to what they can afford, because likely there's probably going to be some quick wins. Get done quick, make it less likely, give you a bit of space to think about what are the things that we need to step through next, talk policy right, quote up the implementation of it, make it happen, review, next one, what are we going to do? Because, you can go hell for leather. I think actually having a bit of a steady walking pace means that you're going to be able to bring people with you, whereas if you do it big bang approach, some people will get left behind. And we get reminded of that sometimes when we just try and do like onboard a new customer. We're trying to put everything through in a really short period of time frame because the customer's trying to hurry us along. And then we remember that, okay, some people within the organization are never going to be able to take up, say, using a password management tool.
Yeah.
Like very quickly, because it's kind of changing the way and when they do get it, they'll like it. But they need a little bit of extra hand holding, one-on-one training. And that's fine. We're going to just adjust that to work with your people.
Well, it makes sense. Like, there's a concept, it's in chemistry and living systems. I like biology, I love people, but...
Is this Le Chatelier principle?
That homeostasis is what I was going to talk about.
I think it might be related. Okay.
But homeostasis is, in essence, when there's a change in a living system, it tries to build an equilibrium, tries to fix the change. So let's say you had like a chemical took up more mass, and you increase the pressure so it takes up less mass to accommodate the change.
Less volume.
Yeah.
Yep.
Maintains the status quo. Not less mass. Yes, well played. Well played. So it makes sense with that staggered approach. Is that it would say in that process the rate of resistance is equal to the rate of change. So if you make a drastic change, you're gonna have a drastic resistance.
Yeah.
So if you incrementally introduce the cybersecurity to your business in a way that it's palatable, it's not going to invoke too much resistance, it makes sense that it would probably land a little softer.
Yeah, because generally people are already thrashing themselves right now, right?
Yeah.
Doing the normal job. And now you force them to do something slightly different, and they may not like it, and they're just having a crap day. It's like, okay. I think the important principle is just to be kind and go like, okay.
In your own
no
time.
fuss. In your own time, we'll come back to you and we'll come around again. And eventually they've just been obstreperous, just getting in the way. Have a little chat with the boss. Okay. Can you just handle that? Because, generally the security guys, they're just trying to get their job done too. Everybody's just trying to get their job done. Sometimes people just being a little bit of massaging,
Yeah.
Leave a little chocolate on their keyboard, that kind of stuff, just to help smooth the flow next time.
Well, that's a tough gig. Like, if I put myself in your position, I've got to convince these people that it's worth something, or it's after something fucked up happened, or there's a stressful merger that suddenly we've got to meet the international standards. And then you're coming in and they don't see that much importance in there. You put into the side and you're like, hey, you got to do this thing. And then you got to go through it. Yeah. So kudos for you. Must be from them.
Sales is an important job. I mean, yeah. I used to give sales guys a bad rap because I was an engineer, right? I was a network engineer, and then I got into security, and then it was like, and my experience of sales guys was that they're just being smarmy, and they're always trying to sell something, but quelle surprise, that's their job. Without their job, you don't have a job as an engineer. But the thing is, what I didn't realize until I started doing sales myself is that when you're an engineer, you're the person the customer trusts, because you're the person who fixes a computer, who's working with them and has got the skills to make their life easier, or to get things back up and running. So there is such a high level of trust there that when you tell a client you need to buy a new computer, they will generally go, okay. Now, if you're trying to bring in a whole new set of solutions into an environment and they don't know you from a bar of soap, there's a big trust barrier.
Yeah.
And going back to the podcast, that's another way, like getting out there and talking about this is another way of people getting to know us and know what we're on about, and increase that trust level with them. So when you do actually have that conversation, you don't have to work so hard to get to the next step of the sales cycle.
Yeah. Because
without salespeople getting out there and showing people that they have solutions to problems that people sometimes didn't even know they had, nothing would happen. We'd just be, still knocking around on Coronation Street, complaining about the mine owners. So much of modern society is because sales guys are getting out there and greasing the wheels of commerce. And then, so looking at it from that perspective, they got a hard job, right? And not too many thanks.
Yeah, sounds like it. Well, even if you got the cure of cancer, you got to sell it, especially with this low trusting environment. On that note, on the sales pitch, how do they find you as we were at this?
Oh, right, yeah, vertec.co.nz, or if you Google cybersecurity or something like that onto the old Google thing, you can find me on LinkedIn, Daniel Watson. I'm the one with the ginger beard.
Hard to miss.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but that's the thing. This is just a sales pitch.
Brand, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, personal branding, so people don't forget who I am. Not that I had much of a problem before, but
true.
I'm the boss, and I can write my own dress code.
Yeah, fair. All right, well, I'll put that in the description if you want to reach out to them.
Very good. Otherwise, I'm on, Tuesday, every second Tuesday afternoon with GC Mulligan on Tech Tuesday Radio New Zealand. But
famous, mate. Whew. What's it like? Do you get fan mail?
No.
I've had some interesting.
No, what does happen is occasionally somebody mentions, were you on the radio the other day? Yeah, I was. Yeah. And again, it's just a little bit more recognition out there. So I think what you're doing with this is fantastic. it's good. You've got a much better setup than I could hope to have.
It's cheap, mate. I'll tell you what it is. Oh, well, thanks for that. Thanks
All
for
right.
coming on, Dan. We're done.